To show you how important elected officials feel it is to have this connection with all of you, we have people from local water districts, the port district, from school districts, from the county school districts. We have the county sheriff, superintendent of schools, from city councils, from the county board of supervisors. I mean, we have a lot of elected officials here for you today to ask questions of, and if you don't get a good chance to talk to us at the breakout sessions, a number of us will be here during the lunch, and we'd definitely encourage you to feel free to come up and talk to us whenever you would like to. We also have a pledge to vote card inside of your folder, and we have our clerk head of elections here, Gail Pellerin, who is here to not only just pre-register you, but we want to make sure that you will pledge to vote in future elections and upcoming elections. As you probably know, state law has changed, and you can actually pre-register to vote even before you turn 18. And I got to say, if you have been paying attention at all at the local, state, or national level, I think now is the most important time to have your voice included in the way that this country is going to go, because this is the country that you are inheriting. And we want to make sure that you have a strong voice in that future. And I have a great honor today of introducing our keynote speaker. And I'd like to start by saying that I believe that every member of the stage here would agree with this, which is that if you could choose a time and a place to be and to live, you would choose to be in this region, in this county, right now. This area, right now, is doing more on innovation, more on inclusion, more on technology, more on cancer research, more on things that are going to fundamentally change the trajectory of people's lives for the better than any other region in the United States, and is falling squarely on all of you and your time in the place that you are right now. A lot of times you'll hear people say it's your future, but I would argue actually it's your right now that has the opportunity to do things that even our generations could not do. This is a very, very unique time that we're living in, but you've been given an unbelievable set of gifts and responsibility to be right here in this region right now. And the fact that you're here today, I know means that you're taking it seriously, but I want you to understand that it's a significant privilege to live in this region, and we have a lot of responsibility to help lead, in many respects, the country and the world with the gifts that we've been given in this area. And one of the people that has, for 40 years in this region, been a remarkable innovator is our keynote speaker today, Secretary John Laird. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about him. There is a bio inside your packet, but I think from a more human touch, let me just say that Secretary Laird has done more on innovation and breakthroughs, from being the first openly gay mayor in the United States, to being an elected official at the state, the community college, the community at the city level, to some of the bills that he has authored in the state legislature, over 80 of them which became law, that have done remarkable things for water conservation, for climate change, for making sure that there's equality and diversity throughout the state workforce and that people are represented. You know, there's a real legacy here that Secretary Laird has and continues to have as Secretary of Natural Resources right now, appointed by Governor Brown in 2011. But don't ever question whether or not public service can make a difference, because Secretary Laird is an embodiment of that. A lot of things that are good about this community are because of people like Secretary Laird really made sure to take a leadership role in it. I'm honored to introduce him. I think that we should all be honored that he's our keynote speaker. Please welcome Secretary of Natural Resources, John Laird.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to see you are wide awake, because this is an exciting gathering, and the fact that you're here is very special, and I want to, in a moment, tell you why. First, though, I just want to acknowledge that this is one of the most amazing arrays of local elected and appointed officials that you will see, people from every jurisdiction. And through the day, you should really take the advantage to get to know them and learn from them, because I think they have a lot to offer, and you're the ones that are going to have to do the heavy lifting over the next 40 years. And I think what I wanted to talk about in sort of the common theme is our democracy constantly has to be regenerated. It is not something that is a given. And at the same time, it's you. There's plenty of reasons to think it's somebody else, but it is really you. And if you just put yourself where I was when I was your age, I was wondering what the opportunities were going to be. I was wondering if I could make a difference. And I have to tell you that when I was 17, I was an exchange student, and I lived in Spain for a summer. And it was at a time that it was a military dictatorship, and it was a shock to my system. The family I lived with had books that had to be in brown paper wrappers so people would not know that they had these books and that they were reading. You took a train, and there was somebody with a submachine gun on every car. My link to the outside world was this English language newspaper that came in from Paris every day, and a few days it just wasn't there, and I wrote them, and they wrote back and said, well, here's the article that the government found offensive that led to them not allowing that newspaper in Spain today. And so it gave me an appreciation for the fact that I could speak freely, influence the outcome of things, not be worried about what I read or wrote or said in public, that I felt safe in a different way. And also, those were Jurassic times compared to what you're in now. And so it wasn't until I was just past my 21st birthday that the voting age was changed from 21 to 18. And so I could not vote when I was 18. My father, who was a high school teacher, did a wonderful thing. He knew I was working on election campaigns, and he said, I'm going to give you my vote. You just tell me how to vote. And it's not fair. You should be able to be doing it. If you're old enough to go into the military and die for the country, you ought to be able to have the right to vote. And then naturally, I voted in one school board election the minute I turned 21, and they changed the age to 18. So you should appreciate that as something that you have a right to. A couple of the other things in sort of a random order is that there's this great scene. If you have ever seen the movie Dave, Kevin Kline sort of plays this guy that's a substitute president. Ben Kingsley is the vice president. And they have this private talk when the president asked the vice president what got him first involved in politics. And he talked about just sort of living in his town, struggling to make a living, and realizing that that was sort of a way that you could make change, in that he was good at it and he could bring people together. And I used to, when I was a city council member and a mayor, I'd love to go to the League of Cities, and I'd love to ask other people, what got you involved? What made you run or get involved the first time? And a friend of mine who was the mayor of Laguna Beach said, it was a tree in my neighborhood. They were going to take down a big tree. I had to find out where City Hall was. I had to go get involved. Well, that tree's still there, and I'm the mayor. And there were a whole host of stories like that. There were women that didn't like police responses to domestic violence calls. There were people that didn't like things in their neighborhood. They sort of were drawn in by something that was going on that motivated them, that caused them to then get involved. Exactly where you are right now, and the ticket is exactly what motivates you is something that you should choose to act on. I also tell the story that when I was a student at UCSC, they gave you a chance to write an undergraduate thesis, which doesn't seem like something you'd rush to do, but I did. And I wrote it on the history of water development in California. And I thought, geez, I'm from a coastal area, and water policy is being decided by the Central Valley and Southern California. I'm a bit of an environmentalist, and enviros aren't really welcomed into the group of water officials. I'll never have a chance to influence this. And now I am the point person for water in the state of California for the governor. You know. There's also a message you don't like, which is pay attention to what you're studying because you might be in charge of it someday. But that is really the opportunity that you have. You have the opportunity to learn, inform yourself, organize, get involved, and change things. And it's not an opportunity that exists in a lot of places in the world. And even though we're talking about civic engagement, it's not always in electoral politics. It's in Santa Cruz. There was a time, amazingly, over 3 decades ago, when some of us just didn't like what banks were doing. You had no control over who got loans, whether money stayed in the community or moved out, and we decided we would form a community credit union that would be one person, one vote, that would make loans that weren't usually made, and it was hard. It was hard to start that from scratch and raise the capital. But it has over 15,000 members now. It has over $100 million in assets. There's businesses across Santa Cruz that got loans that wouldn't have started without it. There's people that have credit that wouldn't have credit without it. And it was a bunch of people just deciding that we could make a difference, we could do something, we could change it. And when the HIV epidemic started, it was the same thing. There was not a lot of organizing going on. There wasn't a public education. There weren't people speaking out for the issues. And a few of us organized, started the local AIDS service agency, the Santa Cruz AIDS Project. And I was executive director at a point that we had 200 clients, 600 regular volunteers. We were mobilizing the community in a way that made a fundamental difference when that happened. We had one that wasn't quite as successful. We formed a child care council to raise money because child care provides the ability for some people to work, some people to make more of themselves. We couldn't make that go over time with the amount of money needed, but it did do some things that pooled resources and made a difference. And what it really is figure out what it is that is a community need, pick an issue, and go for it. And when you look at elected things, there's so many ways that working with elected officials or seeking elected office, organizing for something can make a fundamental difference. You live in a county, and believe me, I am all over the state every week. And you know, last week I was speaking in Orange County. You wouldn't run into anybody on the street you knew. You couldn't influence it in quite the same way. Here you can, because you have access to officials. You go downtown and you run into people you know. There's real community organization. That gives you the opportunity to get involved and make a fundamental difference. And as an elected official, that was powerful. Whether it was parks that existed because neighbors asked for them, or a trail up an arroyo that we made sure happened, or services for seniors because they just weren't being delivered and there was a chance to make a difference and mobilize community effort. That is your opportunity. And I thought I would sort of be personal in another way. As Zach mentioned, that I was really in that first class of openly gay mayors in the country, and believe me, that was 1983. I think there were 10 or 12 openly gay elected officials in the entire United States at the time. It was never a decision about whether to be gay, I'm gay. It was a decision about whether to be clear about it and whether to organize openly. And you get asked a lot of times about wanting a major change. I mean, right now you have a chance to influence immigration issues or healthcare issues or some of the things that are very present in our time. But with that, when I graduated from college, it was still illegal to be gay in almost all the 50 states. When I graduated from college, it wasn't an openly gay elected official in the United States. It was a different time and place. And when I saw the movie Milk, which I avoided seeing for a long time because I knew the ending, and a lot of my friends were his friends and were around him, I was sort of stunned with one takeaway. I had forgot how powerless we were in that era. He had to organize so that whenever the police would go in and raid bars, there would be a community response to try to protect people. I had forgotten that was the case. And one of the first organizing things we did here in this community is the police department in Capitola did undercover arrests of gay people in the beach area. And we decided that we weren't going to, let it go unanswered. And we organized. We organized with the newspaper that printed the home addresses of everybody that was arrested. We organized with the city council members. We took 200 people down to a city council meeting, and we were the oral communications for that city council meeting. One of the things that is a dangerous thing to learn that everybody's wishing I wouldn't tell you about right now that's sitting up here is that you can turn oral communications into a great rally if you really have an issue that you want to press that has solid community backing, which is sometimes the difference between some of the people that come to oral communications. And we had a speaker from the Gray Panthers and a speaker from the ACLU and from Democratic clubs and from Capitola organizations that really made the issue in a good way. And if you looked around the room, for the first time, there was a group of people that felt excluded from the public process that realized they had some power. And if they mobilized together, they could make a difference. And so they got involved in elections. And it was in Santa Cruz County, in Santa Cruz City, and the Santa Cruz transit system. They're among the very first governments in the entire United States to offer domestic partners benefits, to recognize that there were families that might be different than were recognized by the law. And it just kept going. We even organized and said, this shouldn't be just about gay couples. If there are straight couples that for whatever reason can't marry, they should, under the penalty of perjury, get these same benefits. And when I went to the legislature, I did do a bill that fixed that and helped with that in terms of benefits. And then in the legislature, we extended it statewide, and we also voted for marriage. And then the Supreme Court does marriage. And I went from a time that it was against the law to be gay in all 50 states to a time that I'm legally married and my marriage is recognized by state and federal government because of the organizing and the incremental change that we did all the way along in that. And I don't recognize it's always easy. The interesting thing there is I knew we were right, but I had no idea if we were on the right side of history. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I got invited to the White House and got an award as a champion of change. And that's when I thought we are now on the right side of history as well. And believe me, it wasn't easy for my family. And this is why when you talk about change, you're really working with your family, your friends, your community, the whole business. I like to tell the story now that 35 years ago when I was a huge media event for becoming, an early openly gay mayor, it never occurred to me that my parents hadn't told all their friends that they had 2 gay sons. And so I'm suddenly beaming in on every TV station into their community. And one of my brothers calls and says, it's kind of like a funeral around here. People are bringing casseroles. And yet my mother, who was a grade school teacher, started getting letters from her friends saying they had snickered at Harvey Milk and people in San Francisco, and I know you, I know your husband, I know your son at home, very loving people, a great family. Clearly this son came from that. I'm going to have to reconsider how I think about this. And that is the message and the lesson of how one person in an individual act, in just a daily basis, not considering yourself like out on the front lines of something in a big group, makes fundamental change. And so now, you know, when there were some other amazing things when I graduated from college. There had never, Bruce McPherson is here. He sat in a state senate that had a number of women when he was in the state senate. But when I graduated from college, 122 years into statehood in California, there had never been a woman that served in the California State Senate. That really changed. You know, we thought in our dreams an African-American man or woman could be elected president, and I lived to see it. And so there were fundamental changes that came from people in our generation, but now it gets turned to you. I mean, there were even, one of the things we all used to joke about is 40 years ago, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland was so polluted that it regularly caught on fire. The river would just burn. And it led to the Clean Water Act, at the same time the Clean Air Act, and while there's still major problems in different parts of the country, it is better because of that effort that was made. And so as it gets turned over to you right now, we really have a changing climate where unless we take action, we're not going to leave a better place for your kids and your grandkids. And while individually you change your own carbon footprint and you figure out what to do, how do you organize? How do you take advantage of the political system to do that? We're at the highest level of insuredness in healthcare right now. We can either go forward or we can step back. That is really up to you to decide what to do. On immigration, we can either come together for some kind of solution that recognizes fairness in what's going on. That's really up to you. We still, the Harvey Weinstein issue has focused on the fact that women are still not comfortable in certain places in this society or feeling safe, and we have a chance to sort of move that ahead. And it is the same with racial issues that have come to a head across the country. So the question is, are you going to use what's given to you, the ability to change, the ability to write letters, the ability to organize other people, the ability to make an individual statement, to pick an issue and make sure that we leave this place better than the place we found it? And that is what civic engagement is all about, is using your opportunity in a democracy and for all your individual energy to make a change for better. So that's why it's really exciting that you're here today, and I just wish you luck, and I'm counting on seeing the things that you're going to do that are going to change this community for the better and keep a lot of things going. Good luck, and really work at it.